From my perspective, transformational coaching has something to do with there is a kind of conversation that creates a pause in your spirit.
Okay.
There's this pause, and then there's this moment of insight, and then everything changes from that point on. And so there's all kinds of coaching that are incredibly valuable. I've done a lot of business coaching, and people are saying, what kind of content, management system or project management system? Well, I can do that. I can help you with your bottom line, but that's not what brings me life. What brings me life is when the person pauses and they're like, huh.
Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by my man, Audley Stevenson, the Odd Man. He'll unpack wisdom and insights from a cross-section of top quality performers in business, media, sports, entertainment, and lifestyle to uncover key elements to help you live your best audacious life ever. So without further ado, here is the Odd Man.
Greetings and salutations, folks. It's Audley Stevenson back for another edition of the most audacious podcast the internet has to offer. This is the Audacious Living Podcast, and I appreciate you for being here as we continue our ongoing goal of helping our listeners live their best audacious lives ever. As always, I encourage you to catch up with us on our social media channels. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under the handle The Audacious Pod. And then, of course, if you're watching this particular episode on our YouTube channel, then you know that we've got that bell down below. And all you got to do is tap that, ding, 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 and you're immediately connected to all great things Audacious related. Now, I don't know about you, but whenever I'm faced with a challenge or a task, my mind immediately goes into problem-solving mode, and I start trying to figure out the answer almost immediately. Now, I'm not in any way, shape, or form suggesting that there's anything wrong with taking that particular approach, because really and truly, there's not. However, I would like to submit that there is great power in taking a moment to catch your breath simply by taking a pause. I mean, stopping, slowing down, and regrouping, and then trying to solve your problem. It's a healthy and productive way of dealing with issues, and it's something that today's guest believes in wholeheartedly. Miriam Gunn has been fostering growth in others for almost 30 years, and she's done so as a mentor, a licensed therapist, and a certified coach. She's truly passionate about helping businesses and high performers reach their next level so they can add their influence to this amazing world that we all live in and share. And Miriam truly believes that when you take that pause and take that moment, that we can accomplish almost anything. So with all that being said, I'm going to slide on out of the way and give you an opportunity to hear from Miriam Gunn, who's up next on the Audacious Living Podcast. Hey, Miriam, thank you for joining me here today on the Audacious Living Podcast. I so appreciate you taking the time like this. So thank you for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure and privilege. This is going to be fun.
Yes, it does. If it's not fun, then why are we doing it? That's what I say, right?
Absolutely.
We spend so much time on this podcast encouraging individuals to live their best audacious lives and, step into themselves, take that first step. And for some, they might see it as they're taking a risk. But at the end of the day, what we're talking about is being, you're bold, and being the person that you're intended to be. And as a therapist, as a coach, you very much help people get to that better place and get to that place where they're intended very much so. And that's why I see the synergies and you being here, it makes so much sense. And perhaps as a starting point, maybe I can get you talking a little bit about your work that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Audley. I feel like if you were to look at the arc of my life, the thing that I'm doing has never changed, but the context continually changes. So when I was younger, I was listening to people who were struggling, whether that was my friends in high school or wherever, and the boyfriends and the girlfriends and all of that drama. And then when I was a young adult, I was mentoring college university students, and it had a similar flair, just a little bit more adult. Where are you struggling? How can I help? And at some point, I decided to get the formal degree and became a therapist. Where are you struggling? How can I help? And then at some point, I realized I love working with entrepreneurs. I love the entrepreneurial mindset.
Yep.
I got some great coaching myself. I was on the receiving end. And I thought, you know what? I would really like to transition this into transformational coaching. And guess what? Some of the things we talk about: where are you stuck? How can I help? So it's the same skill set, it's just a different context.
I wonder if you can provide just a definition of transformational coaching, just for those listening that maybe not understand the term or familiar with it.
Sure. From my perspective, transformational coaching has something to do with there is a kind of conversation that creates a pause in your spirit.
Okay.
There's this pause, and then there's this moment of insight, and then everything changes from that point on. And so there's all kinds of coaching that are incredibly valuable. I've done a lot of business coaching, and people are saying, what kind of content, management system or project management system? Well, I can do that. I can help you with your bottom line, but that's not what brings me life. What brings me life is when the person pauses and they're like, I have never thought of it this way before. And when you have that aha moment,
Yeah.
you don't go back. It like actually changes your life, and it changes your trajectory. So that's a
Mm.
short definition.
And what I love about the aha moments is that oftentimes, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but oftentimes the aha is generated because the answer was kind of right there. Like it wasn't, you didn't have to go somewhere else for it. They didn't have to find it anywhere else. It was right there inside them, and you just help sort of unlock it, so to speak.
Absolutely. So many times people are resistant to coaching because they feel like, I don't want someone telling me what to do. If you have a good coach, they are not telling you what to do. They're
Mm,
asking you questions. And as you said, the answer is within you, but a lot of times it's not clear because maybe something in your background, or maybe your context, your circumstances. I don't know why it's different for every single person.
right.
But a good coach is not telling you what to do. They're
That's it.
asking. They're
That's
asking questions.
That's it. Self sabotaging behaviors. That's for many of us, I'll even include myself. That I've experienced different points where there's things that I'm doing where I'm holding myself back, and no just cause, just because, or maybe the reason is underlying, or it's related to something else. Maybe my child, who knows? But it's not an uncommon thing. A lot of us do it, don't we?
Yeah. Yeah, it's not an uncommon thing. And if Google it or you look up books, there's lots of books about it and lots of Google entries. So yeah, it's a common thing. And I've asked myself that question, why do we do what we don't, why do we do the things that we know we shouldn't? And why do
Right.
we not do the things that we, know we should? I mean, that's a question that's as old as time. And ancient books of wisdom pose that question right there. Why? And I feel like the answer is really complicated. And I don't want to sound like a broken record and say it depends, but I think it depends, you know? And sometimes there is a space where, like, depending on how you've been raised, depending on your culture, you might have been raised to never stand up for yourself, to
Mm,
always defer. This is the polite thing. This is the
right.
respectful thing, to be deferential. And
This
maybe the
this is
thing
the
you're,
right thing to do.
this is the right thing to do, or
Right.
the godly thing to do, or whatever. And maybe
Mhm.
the space you're in right now is standing up for yourself. And that's very, very hard because you're at war with that place within you, that early teaching. Or I think about how many people sabotage themselves with food, and they know that this is not what they want to do.
Mhm.
But, we got a bunch of chemicals in our brain that are just, flowing, and the dopamine and everything, and finish that bag of chips. And that might be a
Right.
space where we're kind of paying attention to the you of today instead of the future you. So there's a
Mm.
lot of reasons we self-sabotage, and it's not as easy as, well, just make a decision and just change. Like I hate it when people have these really quick and easy statements, you
Right,
know. I mean, it
right.
works for Nike, but it doesn't work for us.
That's right. Like, or back in the
Just
'80s
do
when
it.
when Bobby McFerrin said, "Just be happy," right? Like, I mean,
Yes.
there's more going on there because it is a bit of a process, and part of that process, maybe I can get you to chime in here, but part of that process is being able to recognize what those self sabotaging behaviors are. That's not an easy thing, is it, Miriam?
No, it's not. And you know, I'm actually kind of shocked at how many people are on autopilot. I was in a company last week and I was talking to a gentleman, good, you know, he's good at what he does. And I was asking him questions that were just stumping him. And he goes, you know, Miriam, I never think about this stuff. I never think about any of this. I come in, I do my job, and I leave. And I was just helping stretch his brain to think about these things and to be self-reflective. It just wasn't like first nature to him.
Hmm.
And I think actually a lot of people are reacting to their their life circumstances. They're reacting to their, you know, gut bacteria and their blood sugar and their spouse and their, you know, the news. They're reacting, reacting, reacting. And it kind of takes a moment for you to like pull out of the matrix and say, what's actually going on here? You know, why am I doing this? What would I like to do differently? And sometimes people are not willing to take that pause.
That pause is an important step to take in our development process because that pause allows us to reflect, it allows us to recharge, and allows us to even regroup and gather our thoughts. And so if you've got something that you're working towards, a goal you're trying to attain, being able to pause is significant for all those reasons I mentioned, plus I'm sure a whole host of others. Is that something that you regularly encourage people to pause and reflect, or what's part of your work that you do with them?
Yeah, I will ask them to I have found that until someone recognizes the value and wants to do it, they don't practice it on their own. It feels like a waste of time or it feels kind of weird. Or actually, when people pause, they get anxious sometimes. But when they're with me, I'll ask them, I'll say, hang on, hang on, hang on. Just take a breath. Let's take three big breaths and let's like, oh,
Uh,
let's just get here, you know? Now, hang on. And I'm going to ask you a question and don't answer me right away. Don't answer me the first thing that comes to your mind.
right,
Let it sink inside you. Let's take a second. And maybe you actually have three or four answers inside you.
right.
Why don't you throw all of them out and let's just see where they go? But pausing is a learned skill. And
Mm,
some people who are young, maybe older souls, learned how to do it. Maybe they had parents that encouraged that. A lot of people don't actually do it until their life falls apart
mm,
and something stops them. It might be a health thing, you know, it might be a huge breakup, you know, a
sure.
divorce or somebody leaves them or a child dies. And it's not, I'm not advocating for tragedy, but tragedy has a way of making you stop and sort of
Right,
look,
right,
you know?
right. And
Yeah.
look and develop an appreciation for the things around you. Um, cause you to evaluate, your own self. And yeah, I do agree with respects to the like I certainly want to honor what people go through and they experience tragedy, but I also want to recognize that you can take from it and not say you have to. I certainly don't believe that people have to experience tragedy to learn, but certainly
No.
at the same time, it does create an opportunity. As painful and as difficult and as challenging it is in the moment, it does create some opportunities. But at the same time, I say all that, but honor what people are going through too, because I don't want to minimize anything at all.
Oh, of course. Yeah, no, we should never minimize their tragedy. And I think my point about those hard spaces is that they do have a tendency to stop you
Yeah, yeah.
and make you pause and reflect. And
Hmm.
usually, those really hard things draw that line down the middle of your life, kind of like those insights I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Usually, you can say, oh, that was before cancer or after cancer, or that was before the divorce or after the divorce, or before so and so died or after. They have this way of unraveling that, like, I've got it all figured out space in you.
Yes.
They unravel it
Yes.
and they make you stop. And a lot of times people leave that space different, hopefully in a good way, right?
Hmm. I oftentimes use the analogy of like hills and valleys and kind of what our life is, right? And so on the top of the hills is where, things are great. We celebrate, we feel good. Maybe we've made a huge accomplishment or of some sort. That's a happy place, right?
Yeah.
But undoubtedly, as life goes, you kind of get down in those valleys where it's kind of crappy. It doesn't feel good. It might be painful or hurts. Who knows what's down there? And I use that analogy because that suggests that they are going to come, right? And we are going to experience them. Now, how long we choose to stay in down that valley is totally up to us, but it has to be recognized that the sooner we get out of it, the sooner we get to the top of the hill where all the good stuff lies. And so, if we can continue, and I think it's helpful if we continue that life is a journey. It is continuous. It's not just a stop and it's over because something bad happened. It's yes, this is bad. Yes, this is unfortunate. What do you do next, right?
Yes. I feel like what you're talking about is perspective.
Mm,
And it seems like you can have the perspective, the poor me, why did this happen to me? I knew somebody where no matter what happened, the phrase was, I just can't even catch a break. I can never catch a break. And
mm,
then I know other people, no matter what happens, they say, yeah, but at least this, like something
right,
bad
right,
happens, but they
right.
find the silver lining. And,
Yeah,
if you look at even concentration camp victims and you listen to their stories, some of them became embittered and ruined and destroyed for life, and
yes.
others made something of it. And I'm not judging either one.
No, not,
I've never encountered anything that bad, but there is a difference. And those who have that other perspective experience freedom and joy. And some people say, well, I'm just not a positive person. And it's like, well, there are people who are naturally positive. I mean, there's brain science
sure. Yeah,
to
yep,
say that.
yep, yep.
But honestly, you can work on it
You
too.
absolutely
You can
can.
put an effort into
Yes.
it.
Yes, you absolutely can. And I think the perspective certainly does help with that. I'll share personally, my parents split up as a young baby. My parents split up. So I grew up most of my childhood, well, all of my childhood, not knowing who my father was. Interestingly enough, his name was Audley. So I carried this gentleman's name, and that's all I had known. I was probably in my early 20s when I met him for the very first time. At the time, he had sort of come and seeking out his son rather, and we developed a relationship. At the time that he was seeking me out, he was quite ill, so he knew his mortality. He had a short window of time, and so we met, and we had a relationship for about 3.5 years, and he passed. And I continually, over and over, I say, I had 3.5 years with my father. Like I
Yeah.
don't. All the other stuff. It doesn't matter because I know I had 3.5 years. And so when we talk about the perspective and what people choose to look at, I value that because there was still something gained from it for me. So that's what came to mind when you said that.
Yeah, that is a fantastic and beautiful story because you could have been super bitter. You could have
Sure,
said, I don't want to have
absolutely,
anything to do with you. You
sure,
weren't in my life, when I needed you, so I'm not going to be in your life when you need me. And no, you stepped in the water and you engaged.
yeah,
And, look at how it blessed you.
yeah, absolutely. And so I think if again, maybe it's the optimistic frame of thinking, but there's always a silver lining in all the stuff that we experience, and some are may take a bit longer to get there and find it, but it is there, and so I think that's what we can focus on. We'd be, I think, better ahead in the long run. I think.
Yeah, for sure. I was thinking about this mostly because I picked up a vehicle from an auto body shop
Mhm.
today.
Yep.
There are things that you do to take care of a vehicle, and nobody bats an eye. They're like, yeah, get your tires rotated, get your oil changed, and people may or may not do it, but nobody says, oh, that's not a good idea.
Right.
And I think there's so many things with our our mental health and the ownership of our life that people leave to kind of whim or chance or that's just
Right,
not who I am, or I'm not
right,
that kind of a person. But
right.
if you read any of the research on this stuff, they will say cultivate a positive mindset. Do these sort of things, like protect the negativity that comes into your purview. You can control how much of the negative news or the negative friends that you're around or whatever. And people just don't seem to think that they can do it, you know?
Right.
They
No.
don't necessarily think that they can take ownership. But you look at these high performing people,
Mhm.
they take ownership over
Yeah.
their life and they watch what they consume, both
Yeah. Yeah.
literally, but also in a mental space, you know?
And I think those are the sorts of things that we can do to fortify ourselves or make ourselves more resilient when we go down in those valleys, right? So,
Totally.
right, so it's almost you're not waiting until you're in a moment of pain before you find a way to deal with the pain. You're fortifying yourself and you're preparing yourself and you're mentally, going through that process of being ready. And when something happens, yes, again, we acknowledge it, we honor it, and we experience it, but then we move through it and go on to the next piece of our lives.
Yes. So well spoken.
Oh, beautiful. You inspired it, Miriam. Don't, it didn't come from me. It was all you. So we can share that one. We can share that one.
Yeah.
So in terms of the clients, individuals that you work with, is it generally high performers or a specific segment of people that you work with?
Yeah, I generally work with high performers and business owners, usually like I would call them small business owners, but usually they're successful. They've got teams of 5 to 50 people, revenue in the six, seven, eight figures, and they're interested in growing. They're interested in saying, hey, I'm successful, but I know there's another layer. And something else that I'm really energized by and pursuing is I want you to be more successful and I want you to make more money. But I want you to make more money so you can do more good. I want you to be more successful so that you can do more good in this world. So if you're interested in, the third and fourth homes and the 12th jet and whatever, I'm probably not the right coach for you. But if you're interested in, I mean, someone that I'm working with now has been asking questions. He's just a multi gazillionaire. And he's like, I'd like to give back to the community. I'd like to figure out how to create a park or a something.
Yes, yes.
I love those kind of conversations because I think money and status and success are a tool. And then what are you going to do with it?
Mm,
How are you going to help people
mm.
who are, less able than yourself? And it doesn't have to be people. I'm a big fan of helping out the planet and rescuing some land and helping out our animals, whether they're wild or domestic. There are so many places where we can add our energy and
Yes,
our will. I
yes,
think this is what this word stewardship means, that we're not here to just use and suck up and
yes.
squeeze
Yeah,
out the
that's right.
planet.
That's right.
You
That's
know,
right. That's
we're
right.
here to take care of it.
That's right. That's right.
And what can my life touch? Let's suppose you aren't a multimillionaire. You know
Right.
what? Your life still can touch things,
Yes. Oh
and
my
it
God.
does every day.
It does.
So say hi to that person who's checking out your groceries. And I knew somebody I was talking to. I think I was interviewing them on my podcast, and he said every time he goes through the grocery line, he's just making conversation, and he asks the person, "What's your favorite candy bar?" and blah blah, and whatever they say, he buys two of them, and he buys them on a separate receipt so he can give them the receipt, and he gives them a candy bar, and I think
I
he
love
takes
it.
one too, and says, let's enjoy these together and have a good day. And that's such a
Oh,
small thing,
I love it. I
but
love it.
how great is that?
It's so impactful. I mean, I'm the guy that every so often I'll be in the drive-through and I'll pay for the car behind me,
Yeah,
just and not look
yeah,
for nothing, and then drive off. And in fact, I'll try to race off as quickly as possible. So they can't catch up to me and want to give me the money back. Right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, there's just so many ways that we can bless the people around us.
And I do
Yeah.
like I do like the fact, although it is people know this, but I do like the fact that you identify that you don't have to be a multimillionaire to touch people.
No,
And there's so much different ways, our presence, right? Giving our time, giving our energy, certainly, yes, our resources, but that doesn't have to be money. I think at the end of the day, if if we can expand our influence by touching people with any way we can, using our natural gifts and abilities as a coach, there's some natural skills that you have that makes you a good coach. Well, you're by putting those into practice, you're using those skills to help someone else get to a better place or a next level or achieve more. Then you're making that difference, and I think that's what we can all do collectively. And again, I know we're sounding kind of airy fairy here, but we're making this world a better place. And I think that's really what the purpose is. Because at the end of our days, Miriam, when we sit back and we go, okay, I've lived a life well lived. What did I accomplish? What did I do?
exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking as you were saying this, it isn't airy fairy at all. And I
Okay.
feel like sometimes people minimize, and I don't know why they do this, but they minimize these kind of things. They make excuses, or maybe it's some of that negativity. It's amazing the good that people can do. This morning, excuse me, I was talking to somebody, I was WhatsApping somebody who sent me a picture of her bookshelves, and I recognized that she likes the same kind of books as another friend of mine. And I just copied the picture of the bookshelves and sent it to this other friend and said, use your fingers and like you can expand it. I think you have some similar books, but I also think there are some ones you might be interested in. She was like, oh my gosh, this is great. It was a tiny, tiny thing,
It is.
but it made a difference. And I want to share one more story
Yes.
because
Please,
I think
please,
it's really positive.
please.
Another one of my clients, and he is fairly wealthy, has a company, has a team, and he found out somebody in his area, I think it was a neighbor, um, has metastatic cancer. She doesn't have that much longer to live, and her house was in the process of being built or renovated. I don't know. It was in shambles, and she was going to come home in a hospital bed. And he took his whole team over there, and they did this for nothing. They they fixed it. They finished it. They put up, I mean, I think it was like at stud level, and they put up wallboard, and they, what is it? They mudded it, and they painted it. They made it so great. She was not going to live long enough to see it done, and they did it. And it brought him so much joy, and his
Yes.
team so much joy,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
her so much joy. And it's like, it made me so happy when he told me he was doing it.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful story. And yeah, it's touching. It really is when you can go out of your way. And you don't have to go out your way, but when you go out of your way to make a difference to someone else's life in that profound way, it really, really matters. I know for me, I've had instances where people say to me, "Oh, that time that you helped me, you did this," I still remember that. I've never ever forgotten that. And I'm looking, going, I have no idea what this person's talking about. And
Yeah.
what that says to me is I was just naturally doing
Yes.
what I think I'm supposed to do and not storing it, not filing it, not making a memory of it to go see that time I helped that person, because that's not what it was about. And so those to me I'm always touched by those, because if I don't remember I did something nice for someone, they remember it, I feel great. And so that's
I love that, Oddly. But here's the thing is you were living out you
yeah.
to the best of your ability in that moment. And you don't remember it because it's not like you took a special effort to do it. You were living out your kind
Yeah.
of God-given gifting. And I think about one thing that's so fascinating about not only coaching, but also business, entrepreneurship, high performer, all that sort of stuff. And I see this at other levels, but I see this more at these upper levels. People are super worried about what people are going to think. What are they going to think of me? And what are they going to think
Right.
of if I do this or don't do this? And am I going to come across as too soft or too? And I kind of initially in my coaching, I tried to be like a high powered, hard driving, whatever coach. And I'm like, this isn't actually who I am. And I can get the exact same results for somebody by asking like thoughtful questions and encouraging them and challenging them in a way that's uniquely Miriam, not somebody else.
Mm. As you touched on, made reference to God-given gifts. I actually want to talk about gifts because we all have our own set of unique skills and gifts and abilities, and I would imagine some of your work is helping people explore and uncover some of that. Can you sort of talk about what that your work in that regard is like?
Yeah, I talk a lot about comparing yourself, the you of today to the you of yesterday or
Okay.
last year.
Okay.
Don't compare you to them because you don't know what kind of privilege they had or what kind of obstacles they had.
Great point.
Um, we are so unique and the various challenges and privileges that we each have had are so unique. And so I suppose as I'm trying to help people discover who it is that they are and what it is that they can bring to this world, I ask them to notice places that bring them joy, not not the like okay, the gentleman I was talking about earlier who helped with this house remodel for the neighbor with cancer,
Mhm.
he also is like high adrenaline and loves to do, I don't know, snowmobiling and high adrenaline type
Yes.
things.
Yes. Yes.
There's a difference between that high adrenaline rush and that other rush, and both of them are important to pay attention to. I do think over time, the high adrenaline rush goes away
Mhm.
because, I mean, you have to kind of do bigger and better after you have done the huge snowmobiling thing and then the bungee jumping thing and then the parachuting thing and, whatever the thing is that you can
Right.
get that
Right.
adrenaline space
Right.
to ping.
Right.
Eventually, you've done it all, unless you're like, having Elon Musk take you up out into the stratosphere.
That's right. That's also left.
Um, but I don't think the serving rush ever goes away. The
Mm.
serving rush continues to give and give and give. And so part of finding out who it is that you are and what is your gifting has to come down to, in what way am I uniquely gifted to give to others? And for some people, that's leadership. And for some people, that's service. And for other people, it's listening. And for other people, it's, I mean, there's just so many different ways. There's so many different ways that our talents can be used for the benefit of those around us.
Yes.
And they're not exactly, they're counterintuitive sometimes. They catch you by surprise
Yep.
and you go, whoa, I had no idea doing this was going to
Yeah.
make me feel this way.
Yeah.
So that's a hint, and to follow those little threads of what is it I do well? What is it that meets a need of someone else? And what is it that brings me deep joy?
Yes, yes, yes. And I think it's interesting because when you fall back on those things, you actually, I think you actually stand out in a crowd. Like if you have a group of crowd of people, and I'm doing the thing that bring not only brings me joy, bring others joy. I think you're elevating yourself, although that's not what you're intending on doing. And I sort of like the analogy, the image I have is you're in an elevator, but you have someone sitting on the elevator, and as you're kind of rising up, that person on top of the elevator is also rising, but they're at a higher level,
Yeah.
right? And that's
Yeah.
kind of what I'm thinking about when you sort of talked about the difference we can make on for other people.
Yeah. Ah, I like that. That's fun. I've never heard that analogy, but I like it and it makes sense to me.
I will gladly let you have it and use it anytime you like, Miriam.
Excellent. Thank you.
Oh, it's so wonderful. Like, so we spend so much time on this podcast really talking about the stepping into ourselves, right? And
Yeah.
and there's a level of boldness that's required to do so. The piece that holds many of us back sometimes is fear. And that fear could be of the unknown. It could be fear of failing. It could be a fear that someone else told me not to do, and I'm not doing it because it was their fear and they projected on me, and I've adopted and accepted it as my own. I wanted to sort of talk about the process of managing or dealing with fear.
Hmm. That is a good question. The process of managing fear, I think might start with, where's this fear coming from?
Right.
And sometimes the process of managing fear is just giving yourself a second. Like, I'm part of a
The
coaching
pause
group.
thing again?
The
Is that the
pause,
pause?
yeah, the pause thing again. I'm part of a coaching group, and there was a prompt. I was talking with a person, a fellow coach, and the prompt was, if you really knew me, you would know. And he went first. And he said, if you really knew me, you would know. And he listed off this. And if you really knew me, you would know. And he listed off 3, 4 things. And I found myself getting really anxious in that moment and going, wow, I did not realize there is a tiny part of me that's afraid to be seen. So much of my life has been listening to others and seeing others. And I didn't realize, ooh, that's a little bit like, it wasn't a huge fear, but I felt it. And I just needed a pause. And then I said a couple things, I'm trying to remember. I think I said, if you really knew me, you would know that I'm fiercely loyal. And if you really knew me, you would know that sometimes I'm not about making something bigger and better. I'm just really content to be on my little farm and be with my animals. And if you really knew me, you might know that it seems like, oh, what did I say? It seems like you're really close to me, but actually you aren't quite yet. Things like that,
Mm.
you know? And it was such a fun exercise for me to try. So that doesn't actually answer your question, but in that particular instance with fear, it was about just taking a pause,
Mm.
recognizing, hey, I'm feeling a little anxious here. And then it was about just moving through it, pushing through it. I
Yeah.
think other times of fear, it might be about, what else is this like? Like sometimes people feel fear at public speaking. And
Yes.
if you pay attention, it's very similar to the fear that you feel as you're going up a roller coaster and you're just about to come over the top.
And
And so
it's clicking as
yes,
you.
yes, yes. And so in that space, fear is like excitement. And if you can
Yes.
say to yourself, well, maybe I'm afraid, but maybe I'm just excited. I know a lot of Olympic athletes do that. They feel that same feeling of terror, and they make an analogy and they say, actually, this is just excitement, and they push through it. I think there's another kind of fear that is closer to terror,
Okay.
and that space, I want people to pay attention and then back up a little bit and say, clearly I need something else. It might be more training, or it might be another person to come alongside. Like I might need a traveling buddy
Right.
on this particular adventure that's so terrifying. So I guess I would say with fear, first I would say, what is this
Where's it
and
coming
where is it
from?
coming from? You don't have to talk yourself down or through or whatever. You have to understand it and then say, okay, this part of me that's afraid, what does it need and how can I support it so that we can take the correct action for this particular scenario?
When you talked about that second type of fear, the terror, if you will, that's oftentimes I would think we go in that flight or flight mode, right, where
Yeah.
we get, and that at least that's what I'm thinking. That's what happens. Like when we feel that extreme level of terror, and it's for that reason why I always encourage individuals not to make decisions when you're emotional, right?
Yes.
Because you're
Yes.
not really in the right frame of mind. And I'm going to say it again here. And I think those are the opportune times where we have to pause, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. We're going to have to name this episode The Pause.
I think I think we've just done it. I think we've just done that.
Yeah. But you're correct. You don't make a decision. When you're in your fight or flight space, that space in your brain is your amygdala. And when you're in that space, all of your brain resources, the blood and everything is going to that deep part of your brain that's about keeping you safe. Well, just like if you're in a space, outside where it's super cold or where you're afraid or whatever, all the blood comes in from your extremity to your core so that your
Yes.
heart and lungs can
Yes.
function properly.
Yes.
All of the blood in your brain goes to your amygdala, your prefrontal cortex, which is where your like higher thought processes are. they're not online. So you're absolutely right to
So
not
like the
make a
decision making, you
decision.
mean, right? The decision
Yes.
making. Got you.
Yeah. It's not
So
online.
that's actually so there's like physiology that suggests this. Not so as opposed to just it's not good to make emotional decisions.
Yeah.
There's actually scientific proof that
Physiology.
says you shouldn't
Yes.
do that. Wow. Okay.
Exactly.
Wow. There we go. There we go. I feel smarter already.
For sure.
Thank you. Thank you again.
You and I could spend some time, I think, just shooting the breeze. We could have some fun.
we certainly can. We certainly can. But Miriam, one thing I want to ask you about, and again, I've absolutely loved this conversation. I really, really have, and I'm so glad that you're here. And had a great time. I want to specifically ask about so there's the individuals out there listening, and they're taking what we're talking about. They understand the pause and how important that is to their lives, but they also have the desire to get to that better place and to live that more audacious life. Certainly, the services of a coach can help with that for sure. But wondering what kind of steps do you think or would recommend that they go through to get to that place that they're striving for?
Yeah, this is a question I ask myself constantly because I want to reach the end of my life saying I lived the best version of Miriam I ever could. Um, I think that the people you hang around with make a huge, huge difference, both pulling you down and elevating you. And so I would say at some level, you have to find community of people who are pursuing their best selves. They don't have to be pursuing the same thing you're pursuing,
Right.
but they have to be pursuing their best self. And I think that they also have to have not only a learner's mindset, but a lack of a victim mindset. And I don't know any sort of percentages, but based on just people I rub shoulders with or in out there and in media and whatever, there's just a huge percentage of people who think that they have no agency over their life, that it's they
Mm,
and them, it's because of them, and it's because of this boss, and it's because of that lawmaker, and it's because of that neighbor, and it's because that's why my life stinks. And it's like, no, you have so
mm,
much more agency, but you
yes.
have to hang out with people who also believe you have agency. Because if you hang out with a whole bunch of people who have this victim mindset and external locus of control, it's easy to kind of get pulled into that. And you can
Yes.
find yourself
Yes.
complaining and making excuses. When you hang out with the other kind of people, wow, their attitude really pulls you up. So
Mhm.
I would say definitely that. I'm a big fan of reading books and watching YouTubes that are positive, that are giving ideas. And not to beat the coaching drum, but I just got involved in a coaching cohort myself, and I've been shocked at how much life and joy, and they've given me so many great ideas. Like I feel like, the water rose and it lifted all the boats, and I'm just going, whoa. So I just can't say enough about having people in your life that elevate you and challenge you and champion you.
But a friend of mine recently went through a breakup with her partner, and she was talking about just about that kind of that process. And she has a group of friends, and they all kind of they rallied around and offered the support. And they gave her this card, and it was like one of these breakup cards, but it was actually interesting because it was all about like he's terrible and he's no good and and she I'm still looking at this thing going like I get it, they're trying to make you feel good, but that's not elevating you. That's not bringing you
No.
up. It's simply just. In fact, I think it's helping you focus on the wrong things, right?
Yes.
So much can be said about the people you're with. And the type of support you're getting. And even in that example that I gave you, the support that you're getting is got to be the right kind of support. Even if you
Yeah.
think you're getting something that you need, that's not what that individual needed. But the support system said, yes, this is how it goes, and he's terrible and this all kind of stuff. But that wasn't the answer.
No, no. I appreciate what you're saying. And I hope my daughter listens to this podcast because I say stuff like that to her. Because, yeah, no, I think what you need in a situation like that is for people to have empathy. I'm so sorry you're hurting. And at an appropriate amount of time or space to say, how can I support you as you move into this next space that's going to help you grow?
Right.
Is that, challenging you to get, back out there? Is that introducing you to someone? Is that giving you space and then gently teasing, like, how can I help you grow? Not how can I, hate on this guy with you? That's just not useful.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear you. I thought that too. And I said, okay, no problem. So anyhow,
Yeah.
Miriam, like I said before, this is great. Thank you so much for doing this. We've had a delightful chat. I agree with you. We could probably go on for hours and hours and just keep on going. But all good things must come to an end eventually, and as does our conversation. However, I would like to provide our listeners an opportunity to connect with you and your work and your podcast as well. So if people wanted to do so, where can we send them?
Okay, my podcast is Leave Better Podcast,
I love the name.
or the Leave Better Podcast, but it's just Leave Better.
Yes.
And that's the name of my website as well, leavebetter.com. And you can reach out to me at miriam@leavebetter.com.
Amazing. Miriam, thank you so much for the time. This has been great. And congratulations on the great work, and take care.
Thank you so much, Audley.
Back we are here on the podcast, and much thanks and appreciation goes out to Miriam for being here and offering up some great insights on the beautiful conversation, on the coaching work that she does with high achievers, the importance of having a positive mindset, and why it's so critical we take that time to pause when we're faced with challenging moments or difficult decisions that we've got to make. So again, Miriam, thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciated much of what Miriam had to share with us today. But if there's just one thing that I would take from our chat, it would have to be this. As humans, we have a natural tendency to want to solve our problems as quickly as we possibly can. We want to jump into action and fix things, especially when we're facing, major decisions or challenges. But sometimes the best thing that we can do for ourselves is to take a step back and pause before actually making that decision or taking that action or trying to solve that problem. Taking time to pause before making major decisions or when going through challenges is so critically important for us to do, and there's several reasons why it makes sense to do so. Firstly, it gives us time to think, which is so important, especially when we feel the pressure to make a choice quickly. But sometimes, when we make that quick snap-second decision, it can lead to mistakes or possibly even regrets. By taking the time to pause, we allow ourselves the opportunity to reflect on the entire situation, consider all of our options, and make that decision with a clear, focused mind. Secondly, taking a pause allows us to process our emotions. It can be super easy to get caught up in our emotions and all that we're doing. We can feel overwhelmed, stressed, and even anxious. By taking that pause, it gives us the space to acknowledge and process our emotions, which can help us make better decisions in the long run. And again, why it's so important that we take that time, because we know our emotions can definitely get the best of us. Thirdly, taking that pause can help us gain much needed perspective. When we're caught up in a difficult situation, it can be hard to see the bigger picture. Taking that step back gives us that opportunity to gain some distance from what we're looking at and dealing with, and it also gives us perspective, which of course allows us to see things much more clearly than we did initially. And then finally, taking a pause can help us make more informed decisions because we have all the information. When we rush to make that decision, we may not have all the data that we need. by taking the time to pause, we can gather as much information that we need, consider the perspectives, and make much better and informed choices. In conclusion, taking that time to pause before making decisions or going through major challenges is crucial. It allows us to think clearly, we can process our emotions, gain valuable perspective, and make informed decisions. So the next time you find yourself faced with a difficult challenge, consider taking a pause, slowing down before jumping into action. In the long run, your future self will thank you for it. We've come to the end of another edition of the most audacious podcast you'll find on the internet. And as always, I send my thanks and appreciation to our amazing listeners and all those lovers of audaciousness for your tremendous ongoing support. Believe me when I say this, it's truly, truly appreciated. Until next time, stay safe, be kind, show love to one another, and be audacious.
You've been listening to the Audacious Living Podcast, hosted by Audley Stevenson. If you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, be audacious.